So, any other question? So, could you understand the process of construction of interpolation function for serendipity element using mid-side nodes or one-third nodes, interior nodes? First construct the interpolation for those nodes and then modify the bilinear interpolation of corner nodes appropriately. No? This process, when this we discussed, this element, let's say 8 node element. So the interpolation function for 4 node quadrilateral is this bilinear, this n1 hat is obtained by linear multiplication of linear interpolation between node 1 and node 2 in x and between node 1 and node 4 in y direction, and that will give you this uh, bilinear variation. That's a straight line variation. It takes unit value at node 1 and vanishes at all other corner nodes. And this linear variation obviously means that at the midpoint on this edge, the value of this variation is going to be half. So in order to make this variation to vanish at these mid-side nodes at these two edges, what we do is we subtract half of the interpolation function corresponding to these two mid-side nodes n5 and n8, because n5 and n8, as you can see, has no contribution, no effect on any other node except the n5 nodes 5 and the node 8, right? So when we subtract this, then this bilinear surface that is given by Lagrangian interpolation in x multiplied by Lagrangian interpolation in y, one dimensional Lagrangian interpolation. So this bilinear is dragged down by these two quadratic functions to give this quadratic surface, which satisfies all the requirements of interpolation function. And similarly, we can construct the interpolation functions for node 2 as modification of bilinear bilinear Lagrangian interpolation for node 2 uh, by subtracting half of interpolation functions of n5 and n6. Similarly, n3 can be obtained as n hat n3 minus half of n7 minus half of n6, and n4 can be written as n hat 4 minus half of n7 minus half of n8, and that would complete the description. And as we know that for rigid body motion, the basic requirement is that ni summation of interpolation function should be equal to unity, because that is what will ensure that all nodes move by the same amount. I mean, rigid body motion, all nodes have to have the same deform, the same displacement. So let's say u1, u2, u3, u4, u5, u6, u7, u8, they are all equal to, let's say, u0. That's the rigid body displacement. So the displacement variation within the element is going to be sigma ni ui. So ui is of course constant, and everywhere it has to be same u0, So that can only be satisfied when sigma ni is equal to 1, and that you will once you if you add all of them together, you will find that that condition is satisfied, in addition to the basic interpolation criteria that ni xj yj should be equal to delta ij. And similarly, this is for the 8 noded element, serendipity element, and for 12 node bicubic element, bicubic because it is cubic along x and cubic along y, along the edges. So this element interpolation functions, they are obtained by first constructing the interpolation model for n5 and let's say n7 by multiplying these. I mean n7 is obtained by the product of equation of lines, I mean zeros, and we can suitably modify accordingly. I mean if corner nodes and one bilinear variation for 1, 2 and 3 and 4, they would have 2/3 value at 5, and one will have n1 hat will have 2/3 value at node 5 and 1/3 value at node 6. Similarly, 2/3 value at node 12 and 1/3 value at node 11. So suitable values have to be subtracted. So 2/3 will of n5 and n12 will be subtracted from n1 hat, and 1/3 of n6 and n11 will be subtracted from n1 hat, and that completes the description of n1. Right now n5, these interior nodes, of course they can be multiplied by constructed by using the interpolation models. How do you do that? uh, for n5 it has to vanish at this edge, this edge, this edge, as well as at this node, node 6, right? So what we do is we multiply the equation zeros of this line, that would be x is equal to 1.5 minus 1.5a, right? So 3 by 2a minus 3 by 2a, so that is x is equal to 3 minus 3 by 2a, that is the 0 of this line. So we can say 2x minus 3a is equal to 0, that's the 0 of this line, multiplied by 2y minus 3b, that is the 0 of 2y plus minus 3b, yes, y is equal to plus 3b by 2 at this, that's the equation of this line. So 0 of this line and multiplied by 0 of this line, so this line would be x minus 2x minus 3a, and 0 of this line is 2x plus 3a. So multiply these three zeros and then 0 of this line, that will ensure zeros for all the nodes except node 5, and then normalize it by the evaluation of that product, 4 functions, zeros, product of 4 equations, 4 lines, 4 equations, and evaluate at the coordinates of node 5 and divide it by that to have unit value here, and that is what gives us this node 5 interpolation function for node 5. Similarly, for node 7, we will do the same exercise, multiplying by 0 of this line, 0 of this line, 0 of this line, right, and multiplying by 0 of this line, joining node 9 and node 8, right. So that will take care of all zeros, vanishing condition at all nodes except node 7, and then again it will be dragged down, normalized to have unit value at node 7. And similarly, these equations are derived for all other 1/3 position of nodes, 1/3 and 2/3 position of nodes. And once we have all these uh, nodes, interior 1/3 and 2/3 position nodes, then the corner interpolation function for corner nodes can be derived by tweaking the bilinear Lagrangian function, Lagrangian model for corner nodes. And with that, we have the complete interpolation model ready, and we can go ahead with the uh, weighted evaluation of the weak form of weighted residual statement, and that will fetch us the desired equations of motion, equilibrium equation. So, in order to gel these concepts, let us take an example problem. Let us solve a plane stress problem, the bracket problem that we had discussed earlier as an example of plane stress condition, and solve it using finite elements. Let's go through the process. So we consider a cantilever steel bracket supporting a vertical load and a moment of 1 kilonewton meter, and we need to discretize the domain by using suitable finite elements, and this process of discretization of the domain by the uh, development of this mesh, finite element mesh discretization, is known as pre-processing step of a typical finite element analysis. And then we formulate the element level equilibrium equations, assemble the global system of equilibrium equations, impose appropriate boundary conditions, and then solve for the unknown nodal displacements. This entire sequence of operations is referred to as processing step of a typical finite element analysis. Subsequently, uh, we go back to each individual element level equations again to determine the secondary variables of the approximation in the element, and that will uh, lead us to the stress resultants or the stresses that we require, right? And that is known as the post-processing step. So this is the problem that we have. So a cantilever problem with length, let's say 300 mm, and it is subjected to a point load in between, and the bending moment of 1 kilonewton meter, and this is a steel plate, Young's modulus 2 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 5 MPa, Poisson's ratio 0.3, and density is of course 8000 kg per cubic meter, and all dimensions are in mm, so 200 mm is the depth, and thickness of the plate is 6 mm. Right, so this is plan, and this is side view, this is elevation. So which angle projection is this? Can anybody say? Tell me. Graphics 101. Which projection is this? First angle, second angle, third angle, fourth angle. Any ideas? Okay, interesting. This is a third angle projection, by the way. So we divide this domain by using this mesh of elements. I retain used linear elements just to keep the problem size handy. Otherwise, it would require large number of elements, large number of variables. So this is linear variation, 3 rectangles and 1 triangle, and that using 4 elements we can model this. Alternatively, I can divide these rectangles into triangles, and I can have this linear variation using these 7 elements instead of 4 elements. I will need now 7 elements, and modeling these by triangles. Otherwise, I can have a higher order elements using quadratic variation for rectangles, 8 node rectangle and 6 node triangle. So that is also possible. Or we can have all through quadratic triangle, 6 node triangles, modeling the entire domain. So that is also another alternative possibility. So all of them are valid meshes, and we will use this for obviously the smallest number of equations, equilibrium equations that we will have. Number of elements is just 4. So this is the what should I say, the most coarse finite element mesh that we can have. Right? Although this is not the ideal mesh, I would not use this kind of mesh in practice. We will see about it during discussion. Okay, let me say this node, the point load, we will always try to place a node wherever we have this kind of discontinuities possible in the problem. So point load represents a discontinuity, it's a discontinuous function. So it is not really a good idea to put this in the interior of the domain somewhere. Right now it is in the interior of the domain, midpoint of this edge, right? So it would have been a better model if I had tried to put a node here, and this point load is actually located at a node of element. So this quadratic element should be fine, but for this linear element, if I have to use this linear element, then I should have probably the better model would have been to use a smaller element here, right? And appropriately design the mesh. But nevertheless, the purpose of this discussion is only to show you, run through the process of finite element analysis, and also to explain why this mesh is not really a very good mesh to model this point load. Point load, whenever you have a point load, it should, the location of the point load should coincide with one of the nodes of the finite elements. Right? Since the highest derivative in the weak form, we already looked at the weak form of two-dimensional elasticity problems. The only thing that will, that is going to remain the same, all plane stress and plane strain. The only difference is going to be the what is the value of those constitutive relation matrix, matrix D, D11, D22, D33, and off-diagonal terms. Right, so those are going to be different for plane stress and plane strain condition. Otherwise, the structure of the problem is same. So the idea is same computer program can model both plane stress and plane strain problems with just a identifier flagging the issue, which kind of problem is being modeled, and appropriate constitutive matrix is taken up in the calculation or derivation of the equations. Right. Apart from that, the entire process remains same. And there is another class of problems which is called axisymmetric class of problems that can also be modeled, that can also be handled in the same computer program. So one program with suitable identifier, problem type identifier, can be used for solving 3 different classes of problems. Right? So the highest order of derivative in the weak form is of order 1, and the boundary terms involve 0th order derivative of the weighting function. So the primary variable is the basic displacements of the problem of the equation, and we need to consider finite elements providing C0 continuity of displacements. So the triangle and rectangle elements that we have discussed, they should of continuum modeling, they should serve us well. So this stress analysis problem can be modeled as a plane stress problem because the thickness of the bracket is much smaller than the other two dimensions, and the bounding surfaces, the front surface and the back surface, they are all traction free, right? So this top and bottom is not the right word, it's actually the front and the back, which is in the xy plane, that is traction free, right? Some of the possibilities of the finite element mesh for discretization of the problem domain, they are we have already discussed this. Mesh shown in figures B and D uses a combination of triangle and rectangular elements, and figures C and E comprise of triangular elements only, I mean linear and quadratic. We discussed earlier. So elements in the mesh of figures B and C provide first degree complete polynomial, as we discussed. I mean, 4-node rectangle will have one cross term xy in the approximation, but that is not included that does not contribute towards convergence characteristics. So both rectangle elements, 4-node rectangle and 3-node triangle, they both provide first degree complete polynomial in the approximation of displacement field. While the approximation is complete up to second degree polynomial terms in the finite element mesh of quadratic elements that we discussed, 8-node rectangle and 6-node triangles. Since the bracket is firmly anchored at the base, the essential or Dirichlet boundary conditions of zero displacement must be specified on the edge defined by the node line 1, 2, 3. On all other edges, the natural or Neumann boundary condition, either stress-free or applied tractions, hold. Right? So this will be taken care of during the imposition of the boundary conditions. Now we shall consider the stepwise process of solving the stress analysis problem by using the finite element mesh shown in figure B, that is using the 4-node rectangle and 3 4-node rectangles and 1 3-node triangle. Right. The process is of course identical for all other meshes, it's just the number of variables and number of elements that keeps on changing. That is for the computer to worry about. The process of domain discretization is encapsulated in the connectivity data recording the correspondence of local nodes. Now we define the element level equilibrium equations. The individual elements are defined in terms of local nodes because this processing in the program, the finite computational engine that we have, of course, computational engine doesn't know which node has which number in the finite element mesh. So the computer code, a computational engine is developed according to its own numbering, internal numbering. For all the practical purposes, whatever happens within an element is confined to that element. So it really doesn't matter what a particular node, I mean what is referred to as node 1 is actually numbered as let's say it is numbered as node 100 in the finite element mesh. It really doesn't matter for the construction of approximation and development of the element equilibrium equation. So in the computational engine we always refer to with respect to the local node numbering of the element that is defined, and the interpolation functions etc., they are all referred with reference to the local node numbering of that element. And the mesh data would of course provide this basic information about the mapping between which one corresponds, I mean local node numbering and the actual node number in the finite element mesh of the total problem domain. So that is referred to in the connectivity data which records the correspondence of local nodes I, j, k and l of an element with global node numbers in the finite element mesh and their Cartesian coordinates, because everything depends on the position of the nodes, and the interpolation function would be derived accordingly. Right. So for 4-node rectangle, uh, the node I, j and k and l. So if I have node I is the bottom left node, so let me just go back. Uh, See, so this is these are the global node numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is the global node numbering for the entire domain. Now when I take an element number, whether it is element number 1, 2, 3, 4 node rectangle will always be defined by 4 nodes, and those 4 nodes I refer to as I, J, K and L, counterclockwise direction. So in the case of element number 1, node I, local node number I is corresponding to node number 2 in this global array, global mesh, right? Global node numbering. This is called global node numbering of the uh, complete finite element mesh. Node J for element 1 is mapped onto node 5 of the global node numbering. Node K is mapped onto node 4 and node L is mapped onto node 1. Similarly for element number 2, node I is node 3, node J is node 6 here and node K is node 5 here. So for element 1, node 5 was mapped onto node J, but for element number 2, node 5 is mapped onto node K. Similarly, node number 2 was mapped to node I for element 1, but for element 2 it is mapped onto node number L, local node number L, right? And similarly for node 3 and 4. So this is how we define, and each node position is of course defined by the uh, coordinates. So node 3 is coordinates of node 3 is are 0 0. Coordinates of node 2 are 0 and 100 mm. Coordinates of node 1 are 0 and 200 mm. This is the origin of xy axis, right? So x here, y here. This is the origin. Node 3 is located at the origin. So element number 1, node I is node 2, and coordinates of course 0 and 0.1. Now I am referring to this in meters. And node J is node 5, coordinates x and y coordinates. Node K is node 4 and node L is node number 1 in the global numbering, node numbering. And these are the coordinates of this node. So for 4-node rectangle, we have all 4 nodes. For 3-node triangle, constant strain triangle, we have I, J, K, 3 nodes defined by 6, 8 and 5. And the interpolation function for 4-node rectangle, they are obtained by Lagrangian interpolation by just the product of linear polynomials, linear interpolation functions in x and y. So Ni is given by linear interpolation in x multiplied by linear interpolation in y, and j is similarly given by two respective linear interpolation functions, right? And triangular elements of course are defined by the natural coordinates or even by the standard formulation. So approximation of the displacement field within the rectangular element. So displacement within the element, they are defined as interpolation functions multiplied by the nodal values of primary variable. So Ni Ui The strain field within the element would be differential operator multiplied by operating on this displacement field. So that is L is the differential operator, this multiplied by the shape function matrix. So shape function matrix would be uh, matrix of this type, Ni multiplied by Ui, Nj multiplied by Uj, Nk multiplied by Uk, Nl multiplied by Ul. So they will all add up to give us displacement along x, that is u, and Ni multiplied by Vi plus Nj multiplied by Vj plus Nk multiplied by Vk plus Nl multiplied by Vl. So that will give us the variation of displacement V along y direction. And then the strains epsilon xx, epsilon yy, gamma xy, they are obtained as the partial derivatives of displacements along x and y. And of course the nodal values, that is Vi, Ui, Vi, Uj, Vj, Uk, Vk and Ul, Vl, they are of course unknown constants, so they remain unaffected by these derivative operators. Derivative operators operate only on these functions of x and y. So once we carry out these differentiations, so we have these derivative uh, functions, interpolation derivatives of the interpolation function, and this is what we refer to as matrix B, strain displacement matrix. So it relates the nodal displacements to the strain field within the element. So B is the strain displacement matrix that relates nodal displacements to strain field within the element. And the interpolation functions for the triangular domain are given in terms of the coordinates, and we already discussed the derivation of these interpolation functions. And the interpolation function model can now be, of course, derived in the same form. UE is equal to NUE, and then again followed by strain. Components of strain field can be obtained by this differential operator operating on this displacement field. So eventually we again get a strain displacement matrix relating nodal displacements to the strain field within the element. And these are of course constant within the element, because the displacement variation is linear everywhere, and hence this element is referred to as constant strain triangle. For the rectangular element, the strain displacement matrix is not constant because of the cross product term xy in the interpolation models. So the strain will have variation within the element. So for plane stress problem, this is the constitutive matrix that we can have, and we can evaluate using the given values for the material that is being used, that is steel bracket. So Young's modulus of steel and Poisson's ratio of steel, and we can evaluate this matrix, constitutive matrix for plane stress condition as having these values. So this can be substituted in the equation, the weak form, and we disregard the inertia term involving mass and acceleration, as the applied loads are static and therefore dynamic effects can be neglected. We will come to dynamics a little later, after we are little more comfortable with this process of finite element approximation, finite element formulation. Right? So the element subdomain, that is element number 1, is defined by, this is the mapping of I, J, K and L, global node numbering. So the element stiffness matrix is defined by B transpose dB integrated over the domain. So domain of element number 1 multiplied by thickness T. Now this is of course defined over, the mesh is very well arranged, in the sense that the grid lines, the element is edges are parallel to the coordinate axis, and integrals can be evaluated very easily with straightforward variations of x and y, and they can be evaluated, and this product can be calculated, multiplied, and individual terms can be evaluated. and the integral is pretty straightforward. Nothing except for little tedious effort, longhand effort. There is nothing complicated in these integrals, and they can be evaluated. Even numerical quadrature can be used for evaluation of these integrals, multidimensional integrals. So once we evaluate these integrals, the element stiffness matrix for the element number 1, they are that is obtained as this matrix, right? So this scale factor Et divided by 1 minus nu square can be computed. Everything is known. T is 6 mm, E is 2 into 10 to the power 5 megapascal, nu is zero point 0.3. So this can be always computed, and this evaluates to 1.3187 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 9 Newton per meter, right? And these are of course dimensionless constants. So this is the element level stiffness matrix, and similar operations can be performed for other elements. But before doing that, we need to put this in global matrix, assembly of equations, assembly. So instead of like we had done in the during the process for solution of truss problem or one-dimensional two-bar elements, we developed all equations for all the elements and then plug them together to assemble. It is generally more efficient if we work out one element and then plug in the terms of those elements in the global system of equations wherever they have to go immediately right after this calculation. So we calculate the normal loads due to body forces. Body forces will be generated by the gravity load, self weight. So that is what is evaluated here. That's vertically downwards. So there is no component of body force along x, but in the vertical direction there is going to be self weight component, and that is what is referred to here. So 0 and rho minus rho g, because the self weight would act vertically downwards, and positive sense is assumed to be upward positive. So the body force sign is negative, and these are the this is of course the weighting function matrix that multiplies and evaluated. This integral is evaluated over the area of the domain, plane area, multiplied by thickness, and carry out this integral, and this is what we get. So these are the tractions corresponding to the body forces for element number 1. Otherwise, element number 1 has no external force. If you see here, element number 1 has no traction. It has, this edge is completely stress free, so there is no traction anywhere. This edge is shared with this element, so whatever we calculate from here will be cancelled by the contributions coming from element number 3. At this edge, whatever we calculate from element number 1 would be cancelled by the contributions coming from element number 2. So equal and opposite pairs. So there is no point in calculating here, and here of course the forces would be computed after the analysis, because the essential boundary conditions are prescribed on this edge. So we don't need to worry about boundary uh, field track boundary evaluation at this on these edges, right? So this is the force vector and the boundary equivalent loads applied due to applied traction. In this case, there is no traction whatsoever. So we can, I mean, edge by edge we can go Ij, Jk, Kl, and Li, right? So Ij is node 2, 5, and that is what we have here. So and this will of course be cancelled out because of the contribution coming from the other side, so we don't really need to bother about this calculation. The only calculation that would be required is Li, but that is traction free, so that would evaluate to 0 for this element number 1. So the equations of equilibrium for element 1 is established as K1 U1. So that's this one subscript refers to element number. Uh, do not confuse it with the nodal degrees of freedom. So for element number 1, stiffness matrix for element number 1 multiplied by the nodal displacements, primary variables at the nodes of element number 1 are equal to the body force equivalent nodal forces from the body forces distributed within the domain of element 1 and plus the surface tractions in element 1. So contributions from individual elements can be assembled into global system of equations describing the whole domain. Since a total of 8 nodes with 2 degrees of freedom are used in the discretization, if you look at this, uh, so total number of nodes are 8 and there are 2 degrees of freedom at each node. So a total system of equations would be 16 by 16, right? 2 degrees of freedom at each node, so there will be total of 16 variables. So the coefficient matrix corresponding to 16 degrees of freedom would be a 16 by 16 matrix, right? So since a total of 8 nodes with 2 degrees of freedom per node are used in the discretization, there will be 16, that's 8 nodes plus 2 degrees of freedom. 2 degrees of freedom are 1 displacement along x and 1 displacement along y. So total number of 16 equations to describe the complete domain. And for assembly, the key is to find an appropriate placement in the global template for each coefficient in the element equilibrium equation. And this requires mapping of local degrees of freedom in an element definition to the global ordering of primary variables. And for element number 1, this refers to the mapping of local node numbers and with the global node numbers. So UI corresponds to U2 in the global system of global ordering of variables, Vi corresponds to V2, Uj corresponds to U5, Vj corresponds to V5, Uk corresponds to U4, Vk corresponds to V4, Ul corresponds to U1, Vl corresponds to V1. So these are the local node number for element 1 and these are the corresponding mappings in the global node numbering. So the corresponding stiffness terms would go in the respective places of this global system of equations. So this is what the assembly is. So here we have all the 16 rows corresponding to each variable and these are the columns corresponding to each variable. So here we have corresponding to UL and VL. So we have this elements coming in here, and 2 is referring to kth position, right? No, element 2 is actually ith position. So 1 U2 1. So 2 is actually the ith element, so that's how it is coming in here. So cross-reference terms. So 1 and 2, so ith positions, and U1 V1 and U2 V2. So this is 1 1 1 2 2 1 2 2. So this is the ith position, and these are the cross terms corresponding to I and L interacting terms between I degree of freedom and L degree of freedom in the rectangle equation. So there is a integer mapping. We can define integer mapping for which degrees of which term which would go to which place, and it is added on to the contributions are added up. Cumulative effect is taken because the same degrees of freedom which are shared with other elements, there would be contributions coming from other elements which would be added to these contributions coming in from element number 1. So this mapping is used to define this, plug in these elements, and once we are done with these element number 1, we can go with this for the complete element one by one, and after the imposition of boundary condition, the equations, the boundary conditions are imposed on u1 v1 is equal to 0, u2 v2 is equal to 0, u3 v3 is equal to 0. That is based on penalty function. Either we can use stiff spring approach or penalty parameter approach, and these terms will be evaluated to be 0, and only these remaining 5 degrees or 5 nodes will have non-zero displacements. And the forces can be evaluated using the tractions, and they can be substituted. So the displacements can be evaluated after the solution, and this is the displacement that we have from this system of equations, and this is the displacement shape, deflected shape of the bracket. As you can see, it is consistent with the deformed shape that you would expect in the applied loading, vertical load downward at this point, and bending moment, hogging bending moment at the free end, so that would again add to this flexure. So this is the displacement wireframe diagram. This is referred to as the wireframe diagram of the mesh to show the original undeformed configuration in the dotted line, and solid lines representing the deformed shape. And we can go back to the element level equations, and the stresses and strains can be obtained by using strain field is equal to strain displacement matrix multiplied by the nodal displacements, and the stresses can be obtained by using constitutive matrix multiplied by the strain field, and the strain field can be computed. I mean, these are the displacements predictions throughout the domain, so u and v, right? And this is sigma xx. As you can see, there is almost parallel that, as you would assume, as you would expect from the Eulers-Bernoulli theory, Euler-Bernoulli hypothesis, beam hypothesis, sigma xx, and then there are sigma yy and tau xy constant shears that you can see here. Right. So that completes our discussion on the C0 models. Of course, I omitted certain details of assembly, and for that I would refer you to the detailed discussion in these all examples of any of the books that I have provided. And please do try to understand, uh, understand the process of assembly of equations and the evaluation of boundary integrals that are discussed therein. I'll stop here. Thank you.